Good afternoon. Whether you're joining me for the first time or have been here before, you know that these videos have a lot of content to unpack, and this one is going to be a doozy. Today, I'm going over how to remove the transmission and replace 3 different components on it. It's going to be a multi-part video series with a lot of content on how you can keep your car healthy. First, we're going to go over how to remove the transmission and replace the throwout bearing. After that, replace your transmission mount and the hydraulic setup on the transmission itself. Let's dive in. By removing the 4 bolts holding the center console in, you're able to gain access, peel back both of the boots. Mine, of course, are broken, and you can release your shifter lever from the rest of the transmission. These are your linkage bolts for the 2-piece drive shaft. You have your rear section and your front section. You can't lose these, you can't replace these, you gotta reuse them. Make sure you mark your drive shaft. Front flange, middle universal joint flange, and from the shaft to the universal joint collar. These 2 can pull apart from each other when you take this flange off, and if it does, you're gonna have your shaft be unbalanced depending on which gear you put this back on. One quick thing to note here, when you're taking these off of your drive shaft, this bolt is flush up against this collar here. So what you want to do is rotate the drive shaft, put the parking brake on, and then you can use one wrench to get this engine nut loose instead of what I did, which was rounding your original bolt, which you cannot replace. Take off the rubberized round mount as well as the protection plate in front of it, and then go to the exhaust bracket, remove those 2 bolts, and remove the bolts holding the flex disc in place. These, I used an impact to get the nut off, and then a hammer and pliers to poke them through the hole. They were a little bit stuck in, but nothing to be worried about. Then remove the drive shaft, and make sure you don't get stuck. I'm stuck. Whew. Remove all the hardware on the mount for the transmission, which is the big black piece at the back. Then, start disassembling any bolts you can see and reach from underneath the car that hold the bell housing onto the transmission. Now is a good time to check your operating cylinder for leaks or a cracked boot and replace it if needed. You also have to remove it, so take the snap ring off of the rear side and the clutch fork will push it through the front. The final 3 bolts are pretty difficult to get at. They lay on top of the transmission underneath the throttle linkage. So I've jacked the transmission up from underneath the car, and it's given me a little extra room to get in there. Filming this is difficult, but you want to start by taking off your starter motor, which should give you access underneath to get the last 13mm bolt off here. This one on this side comes off relatively easily. You can access it going horizontally by the exhaust, but this one right here gives everybody a real hard time. If you have a car in the US, just remember that it was assembled in Detroit or Chicago. Either one of these places used American bolts, so it might benefit you from having some wrenches. I fucking hate this bolt. Now it's time to shimmy, shimmy, ya, shimmy, yeah, shimmy, yay, and get that transmission out of the way. 3 things to make this easier are more people, a jack on the front of the motor so that you can get your transmission to angle down, and if you need to, move anything that's obstructing it, including your motor mounts.
All right, I got it. He's spending the night here with the transmission on top of.
Leave the light on.
So, as much as I'd like to stay here and talk about this, I'd just like to get the thing done. So here's the old throwout bearing, which is completely shot. It's actually burned a little bit. All the oil is worn out. There's our new one. Slide that bad boy on there. It's not going anywhere. It's moving nice. Clutch fork is in good shape. The contacts are all good for the backup light. And we're good to get this thing back up onto the car. Come on.
Yeah, you got her. You all right?
Yeah. And now for the moment of truth. sometimes silence is music to the ears. This has been an excellent project, and I can't wait to show you the rest. Have a nice night.